Good Friday afternoon, everyone, and thank you for once again tuning in to another edition of our weekly Friday podcast, if you will, of The Chat. Alan Fitz, your host for the program this afternoon, live from our studios here in Amarillo, Texas, for the Alan Fitz podcast, and welcome into the program. Folks, before I get started with the topic on the show this afternoon, if you have followed me since I began professional podcasting back in June of this year, you will remember me making a statement that we, under no circumstances, would ever use the chat or this podcast to degrade anyone, talk negatively about anyone, or try to damage someone's reputation. Where that promise still holds true on this podcast, I want to remind everyone that that is not what we are doing on this broadcast this afternoon. We are exposing individuals who are breaking the law when it comes to drug and alcohol testing at an East Texas school district. Now, during this podcast, folks, you will hear names of individuals that have direct responsibility with assuring that drug and alcohol testing does take place before drivers are placed on a school bus. And the school district that we are referring to is Tyler ISD. Now, to begin the podcast this morning, all of you do know that if you listen to my podcast on a weekly basis, you know how I like to basically drag things out to lead up to the topic. And this is one of the subjects that I'm actually going to have to do that, because if I just come out and say what our investigation uncovered, you're going to get confused and not understand a lot of the lingo, if you will, that I'm going to be using. So, with that being said, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about the Tyler Independent School District. For those of you that have commercial driver's licenses like myself, the Class A CDL, you will understand this crystal clear as I begin this podcast this afternoon. But for those of you that do not possess a commercial driver's license, I'm going to walk you through the process of what the federal DOT requires of individuals, quote unquote, for hire driving commercial motor vehicles. Now, folks, I use the term for hire harshly on this podcast because that's what this is about. Driving commercial motor vehicles for compensation. Now, to make you better understand where we are going with this and how we have found that the Tyler Independent School District is not following US DOT guidelines, let's back up and start of how all of this actually got started. I have never revealed and never will reveal who my internal sources are, where I get my information. These folks are very, very trustworthy. And I began receiving reports that the Tyler Independent School District was just flat out hiring school bus drivers and not giving them the required drug and alcohol testing. So I decided, let's go undercover with this and let's see exactly what happens with this situation. Let me first of all explain to you what the law actually states when it comes to federal DOT testing guidelines. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Texas independent school districts, now we're not talking about private school districts, we're talking about Texas independent school districts, whether it be ISD or CISD, they're still independent school districts. The law actually states in Texas that school districts, independent school districts, again, are exempt from the federal motor carrier safety regulations with the exception, and I harshly say this, with the exception of Part 382, which under DOT language is the controlled substances and alcohol use and testing requirements that school bus drivers must undergo and get the results before they can physically be placed on a school bus to transport students on public roads and highways of this state. After receiving several tips that the Tyler Independent School District was not following U.S. DOT regulations, I decided that I would take it upon myself and see just exactly what was happening with that school district. So we took the long drive from Amarillo over to Smith County in East Texas. And because I have a commercial driver's license, a Class AM, and every endorsement except hazardous material, which I do not want, and there's a reason behind that, and I will get into that another day in time, I got online through their website and used the portal to apply as a school bus driver with Tyler ISD. Now, let me explain, ladies and gentlemen, exactly what happens after you apply for something like that. There's several things that must occur before they send you for a drug and alcohol test. And I'm going to get into more details of how the drug and alcohol test actually works. But first, let's get into the clearinghouse part of things, if you will. School districts are required to run what is called the clearinghouse on the commercial driver's license. And basically what this is they are running your driving record. Now, the term clearinghouse is used because they run it through the central database at the DOT headquarters in Washington, D.C. These are where the files, the actual driving record files, are kept on anyone who possesses a commercial driver's license. Now, under most circumstances, the driving clearinghouse takes anywhere from 2 to 3 days to receive, depending on how many school districts are running clearinghouse records all at once. Sometimes a school district can get the record back within a couple of hours, but under most circumstances, it takes roughly 2 to 3 days for the complete clearinghouse to come back. And basically what they are looking for, and it's not just a school district, it could also be someone that is driving for a major trucking company. They're looking to see what their driving record looks like. And they're specifically looking for DWI convictions on that person's record. Now, in most cases, a driver with a commercial driver's license that has had a DWI conviction within the 10 years of applying for a driving job with a commercial motor vehicle generally is what is called blacklisted. They will not hire that driver. Of course, there are people that have DWIs that go back 25, 30, 35 years ago. Some school districts, and we have found in our investigation that some school districts, especially the smaller districts, will not allow someone to drive even if that DWI, folks, is 50 years old. Where the larger districts that need more drivers kind of overlook this situation of conviction if it's been greater than 10 years since the conviction was placed on the record. The second thing that the school district is required to do is to run a criminal history check through the Texas Department of Public Safety's database. Now, y'all have heard me talk about this, ladies and gentlemen, several times on different podcasts that I have done, that the third-party criminal reporting systems do not count. These are where the counties sell that public information to different companies such as whitepages.com, and the list goes on and on and on, to, basically show someone's criminal history. Whether they have received pardons or not, dismissals or whatever, this is not what the school district actually uses. School districts go by the Texas Department of Public Safety's database because it is the state police and the only quote unquote official criminal history reporting database for the state. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you may be asking yourself, what exactly are they checking for? Well, they're looking at all criminal history, basically, but they are actually zeroing in on sexual offenses. Has a person ever had a substantiated charge against them for inappropriate behavior with a minor? They're looking for sex offenses, and they also run this through what is called the NCIC, which is the National Crime Information Center that is located in West Virginia. That is where the FBI headquarters is located, Clarksburg, West Virginia. So once the driving record clearinghouse comes back and the criminal history comes back, the school districts in Texas go through what is called the Human Resources Department, and HR for short, if you will, is the one that is responsible for either accepting or denying the applicant for employment at that given time. If the applicant has been accepted, then generally the applicant is required to go in, finish additional paperwork, and go for a drug and alcohol screen. This, ladies and gentlemen, did not happen with me. I passed the criminal background check, I passed the CDL clearinghouse check, and immediately received a telephone call from the HR department at Tyler Independent School District. You have been accepted. We need you to come in, finalize some paperwork. So, actually, I thought, well, this is going to go down like any other CDL job you're going to acquire. They're going to send you for a drug and alcohol screen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not what happened in this case. I went into the HR department off of Earl Campbell Parkway, there in Tyler, signed a few documents. From that point, I was escorted, because I told them I didn't know where this place is. I don't know anything about Tyler. The transportation director himself, a man by the name of Alfonso, and let me see, I'm looking at his last name here, I'm trying to find my notes here, Alfonso Perez, went to the Tyler ISD Police Department. Folks, right after signing that acceptance paperwork. And that acceptance paperwork was talking about, do you accept the pay rate, and yada yada, this, that, and the other. Mr. Alfonso Perez put me in a school bus, one of the brand new school buses that they had at Tyler ISD, and told me to drive to the police department, the ISD police department of the school. This is where you get your ID badge, ladies and gentlemen. So now I have driven a school bus. No drug test, no urine test was ever performed. So we get to the Tyler ISD Police Department. They make my picture. They give me this badge that is encrypted, that you can get in to the schools. All you have to do is touch the badge to the reader. The sensor picks up the chip within the badge, and in the school you go. And yes, I did do that. I'll get off subject for just a moment and say that there was one time, and we'll jump forward for just a second. There was one time that I needed to use the restroom before leaving out with the students. I basically went up to the door, touched the sensor with my ID badge, and in the school building I went to the restroom, took care of business, and went straight back out to the school bus. Anyway, getting back to the Tyler ISD Police Department. So the badge is created. So me and Mr. Alfonso Perez, and I don't know if I stated earlier, he is the transportation director of Tyler ISD, went straight back to the transportation department at that time. And we went to the shop where the school buses go in, the bays for repair work, whatever the case may be, changing of the oil, the tires, the mechanics bay, if you will, I like to call it. And he went into an office that had a wooden box mounted to the wall, and when he opened that door up, it was loaded with keys. And he handed me 3 keys and a fuel fob. In the Tyler Independent School District, they give you a universal key that will work any school bus. You can crank the motor up and drive the bus down the road with that key. There was a universal ignition key. There was also a key to the padlock. It was also universal. Many duplications done to open the central gate for the bus yard. And the third key was to unlock the door, the loading door, if you will, of the school bus. And then there was a fob that is used at the fuel bays. You insert it, put your ID number in it of the bus, and you can fuel the bus with diesel fuel. Just handed me the keys, and we went back into the transportation office, and we went directly to his office. We had a sit-down quick meeting in that office that included what is known at the Tyler ISD School District as the routing supervisor. Routing supervisor was Mr. Jim McDougal. He is the man that is responsible, that makes sure everyone shows up in the morning to do the route, and if they call in, he's the gentleman that will find someone else to do the route. So myself, Alfonso Perez, and Jim McDougal sit down and have a meeting. And during this meeting, they present me with a rather large Samsung tablet that has the entire route that they are putting me on. And in this case, it was bus number 8. And this route was a pretty simple route, although it took about 2 hours to run it. It repeated itself in a figure 8 circle. So after a brief demonstration of showing me how the tablet worked, at that given time, Mr. Alfonso Perez said, go find bus number 8, make sure it has enough fuel. If it doesn't, fill it up, and go do what is called a dry run, a dry route run, ladies and gentlemen. This is where you go and practice, physically drive that route without any students on the bus. Again, I am behind the wheel of a Tyler ISD school bus, driving on a public roadway with a commercial driver's license, and still no drug test has been asked of me by Tyler ISD in accordance to U.S. federal DOT requirements. So I go out and I drive the route. And of course, it's very confusing to me because it does go out in parts of Smith County outside the city limits of Tyler. I don't know anything about Tyler or out in the Smith County. I know where a few towns are, such as Lindale, north of Tyler. I've passed through many times going to wherever I was trying to get to. But here I am driving a school bus and trying to learn that route. So at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, I badge in at transportation because most people are gone, but Mr. Jim McDougal is still in his office. And I sit down and visit with him. Mr. McDougal wanted to know how the route went. I told him fine. He says, can you do it? I said, well, to be honest with you, the tablet that is used by turn-by-turn directions, which is mounted on a stem in the school bus near the air brake control, was spot on. It showed every stop. It showed every turn. And he asked me Monday morning, could you handle that route? Absolutely, because the tablet folks was dead on. So took the weekend off, relaxed, grilled some steaks, grilled some burgers, and come Monday morning showed up at the transportation department, badged in at exactly 5 a.m., clocked in at exactly 5:30, and once again, me and Jim McDougal, the transportation coordinating supervisor, are discussing the route. At 5:30, I go out to the bus yard to bus number 8. I get on bus number 8 and I begin what is known as a pre-trip inspection. All of that was taken care of. Then exactly at 5:55 a.m., I radioed into dispatch, and away I went. Third time. And again, ladies and gentlemen, driving a school bus at this point, hauling children, and still have not taken a drug and alcohol screen. Let me stop right here, folks, and explain to you, for those of you that may not know this, what exactly the drug and alcohol screen consists of with federal DOT testing. Some school districts utilize on-the-spot testing. They will have a drug and alcohol testing company come to the school and test you on the spot. And what they do is the first thing, you have to fill out some paperwork that is physically sent in to the U.S. DOT. After they gather your signature and things like that, some school districts, like I said, will bring in the testing company on campus to do the test. They will perform what is called the intoxilizer test. This is the same thing that you would blow in if you were pulled over for suspicion of drunk driving, and blow in this little rectangular machine. And what they're doing is they're testing your alcohol on your breath to see if you have anything on your breath. Of course, mine, I didn't have to go through that. I have in the past gone through it with a different school district, and of course it came up 00. Then you go through the alcohol test, and it's basically the same whether the drug screen rather, I should say, it's exactly the same whether the drug company comes to the school or you go to the drug company itself. You have to wash your hands, you have to empty your pockets, everything is placed in a secured box. You keep the key. You go into the restroom, and of course the lavatory sinks are cut off to where you can't turn any water on, and of course there is a blue liquid in the commode, which means you can't dip out water. They would know where that came from, and you give them so much urine in a cup, and generally they seal it off, chain of command, all this rigmarole that they go through, and they send it off. Generally, in about 48 to roughly 72 hours, they would have at that point, either a positive or negative test of your urine. And basically what they are testing for, ladies and gentlemen, is illegal substances, barbiturates, cocaine, marijuana, things of that nature. If it comes back positive, you are not able to continue with your employment. Why does the U.S. federal DOT perform this? Well, folks, this is actually part of the pre-employment jazz, if you will, that you have to go through. This is pre-employment requirements. Now, as I said before at the beginning of the program, that Texas independent school districts are exempt from federal motor carrier safety regulations. The only thing that they are not exempt from, and again, I will read this off to you, is Part 382, which is the Controlled Substances and Alcohol Use and Testing. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, what I am saying is that the Tyler Independent School District has broken several laws by not sending me to undergo drug and alcohol testing. Now, folks, I'm here to tell you right now, I do not use illegal drugs. It's hard enough to get me to take an aspirin, but those children on that bus didn't have anything to worry about. But the point I'm trying to make is that how can Tyler ISD prove that I didn't have anything in my system when they didn't send me for the drug testing? They can't, ladies and gentlemen. They absolutely cannot. And where I want to make this point clear is that the parents of children, the parents of these children that are being transported by the Tyler Independent School District school bus drivers, how many of them out there are not being tested and are driving your children around without the school district's knowledge of whether you use illegal drugs or not? Now, I just previously stated that Tyler ISD has broken several laws. I want to be the first one to state that after I made the Monday afternoon run with those children, I got to thinking, we need to stop this right now, because federal DOT can stop that school bus and request your driver's license. They can swipe the stripe on the back of your CDL on their onboard computer. And folks, believe this or not, that DOT officer can see whether or not you've had a drug or alcohol test. It worried me a little bit that this is the first time that I've ever gone through not being drug tested through the urine. At that point in time, I decided my investigation is complete and I no longer want to associate with Tyler ISD. I turned my badge in, I turned the keys in, and I said goodbye. Folks, I'm here to tell you right now, this is a safety issue that we all need to be concerned about. The point that I'm stressing here is because I was hired by Tyler ISD and never underwent the required drug and alcohol screening as required by federal DOT law. I got to thinking, how many other drivers have they employed and cannot prove this drug test upon a federal DOT audit? After the ignition keys and the ID badge was turned in, I filed a formal complaint with the United States Federal Department of Transportation and went into explicit details of my experience with the hiring process at the Tyler Independent School District in Tyler, Texas. I informed them that I received no such drug or urine test as required by law. Made it very clear to the DOT this was a safety issue. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, the DOT already knows that, but I wanted to get my 2 cents in on that. There has also been an official complaint filed with the Texas Education Agency. And let me explain to you where TEA fits in with school bus drivers. School bus drivers are required nationwide to possess the minimum Class B CDL because a school bus is not a combination vehicle. It does not have a trailer attached to it. So it's only a Class B. And there is a requirement that they must have 2 endorsements, P for passenger and S for school bus. But in Texas, it goes a step further, ladies and gentlemen. You have to have what is called the TEA card. This is a yellow and white card that must be carried on your person at all times, along with your DOT medical card when operating any school bus on any public road in this state. School bus drivers must undergo 8 hours of continuing education state credits every 3 hours. If they don't take that course within a 3-year time frame, they have to start over with a 20-hour course. So the school bus card comes into effect, which, folks, is issued by the Texas Education Agency. So a complaint was levied against the Tyler Independent School District to the Texas Education Agency and also the Texas Education Agency Media Relations in case they wanted to contact me and make a statement before this podcast aired. And finally, a third complaint has been levied against the Tyler Independent School District through the Texas Department of Public Safety. This is the agency that ensures compliance with U.S. DOT regulations on the state level. The Texas DPS in Austin has been notified in that official complaint that there was no drug or alcohol test performed on myself prior to driving that school bus for the Tyler Independent School District. Maybe asking yourself, well, are school bus drivers tested after the initial pre-employment testing? Yes, folks, actually, here in Texas, we did the research on this. Here in the state of Texas, state law and USDOT law combined actually states that all school districts throughout the state of Texas must conduct 50% of drug testing annually on their drivers. That's 50%. So if you have, for an example, 100 active school bus drivers in a school district, the law requires at least 50 of them to be tested on a yearly basis. Some school districts will test drivers more frequently and more often to go above and over the required statute to ensure that safety protocols are in place through the drug testing. Also, drug testing, ladies and gentlemen, is required by state law for accidents. This is what is known as accident-related testing, which any accident on a school bus that involves students, property damage, or if a school bus is disabled and must be towed away from the scene, the driver must undergo drug and alcohol testing. And they do that to aid above and beyond the investigation with the appropriate authorities. We have reached out to Tyler ISD Superintendent Dr. Marty Crawford, and also to Dr. Artemis Lawrence, which is the HR, Human Resources Director, there at Tyler ISD. We informed them that complaints had been filed and levied with several agencies that I just priorly mentioned, and that would you like to make any type of comments before this program is aired. And as we expected, no comment has been received from either of those individuals or the Tyler ISD media relations. I kind of figured that was going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. More than likely, probably Tyler ISD school lawyers probably told them to all keep their mouth shut and not respond to this, because, folks, I'm going to tell you right now, Tyler ISD doesn't have a leg to stand on. The United States Federal Department of Transportation can levy some very hefty fines against Tyler ISD for non-compliance of drug and alcohol testing. Now, I want to get into a little bit of something else that kind of carries over from Tyler ISD before I close out this program. And it is something that I found out while I was at Tyler ISD that really, in a way, makes no sense to me. In talking with some folks that worked with the Tyler Independent School District, was a little bit curious of who the past transportation director was at Tyler ISD, and I was expecting one name to be mentioned when another name actually came out of this individual's mouth, and it seemed rather strange to me that an individual a couple of months ago indicated that he was the transportation director at Tyler ISD for 16 years before Tyler ISD kind of, if you would, told him to hit the road, Jack, and he went to the Lufkin Independent School District. His name is Randy Burton. He is the current transportation director at Lufkin ISD in East Texas in Angelina County. And come to find out, he was not the transportation director at Tyler ISD, but rather he was a shop director. And that was according to school district officials. There was another situation that was brought to our attention with Lufkin ISD, and that was, and folks, we have not been able to investigate this, and this really, from my professional standpoint, ladies and gentlemen, does not warrant investigation. But from a reliable source, I can tell you that a man by the name of Brandon Beavers, he is the band director for the Lufkin Independent School District, seems to get irate and irritated with bus drivers going on out-of-town football games within that district. And I do trust my outside source, ladies and gentlemen. I truly do trust them. That I was told, and again, this has not been investigated, but school bus drivers are exceeding the speed limits on public roadways and speeding to get to football games. Now, before we close the program out, ladies and gentlemen, let me explain to the folks out there listening, you folks out there that may not know this, but school buses in the state of Texas are governed by two different speed limits, and I'm going to explain to you what those are. Now, we all know that inspections in Texas have stopped. They stopped the first of this year, but it did not, that law of non-inspection does not apply to commercial motor vehicles, which includes school buses. In the state of Texas, if a school bus has a regular inspection, by law, it cannot exceed the maximum speed of 50 miles an hour. On a commercially inspected, and we're talking about DOT commercially inspected school buses, they can go 60 miles an hour, maximum speed, all roadways. There is some interpretation out there that people say that school buses can drive the interstate speed limit of 75. That is actually false information, ladies and gentlemen. Again, regularly inspected is 50, commercially inspected is 60. I am here to tell you that there was a complaint levied against Mr. Brandon Beavers, the Lufkin band director of the Lufkin Independent School District, for that behavior. Now, whether the DOT wants to investigate that or not, it'd be strictly up to them. I feel like, from my professional standpoint, they would, because that's the safety of your children on those buses. You know, a school bus, 75 miles an hour, 15 miles over, breaking the law, in this case, cannot stop as quick as a school bus, say, going 50 miles an hour. So, I just wanted to throw that up for folks listening at the Lufkin ISD. Before I close out the show, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make a point very, very clear about the Tyler Independent School District. personally would not have believed anyone that would have come up and told me that, hey, I got hired and they didn't give me a drug and alcohol test. Honestly, I would not have believed them. After seeing this with my own eyes, this, ladies and gentlemen, is a serious safety issue that the parents of those innocent children riding those school buses at Tyler ISD need to get together. They need to go to school board officials and have the right to see if those drivers have been fully tested for drugs and alcohol. This is a matter of public record, ladies and gentlemen. Those parents have the right to know if their school bus driver has indeed been tested as required by USDOT requirements. To place an individual that you have never seen in your lifetime, you don't know anything about the individual. They just show up, sign a few pieces of paper, and you throw the keys to a 31,000-pound school bus and transport children without the proper drug and alcohol screening test is absolutely stupidity. And I will be the first one to say that Dr. Marty Crawford and Dr. Artemis Lawrence, you both are complete idiots. You have a capital I for idiocity at your school district. Shame on you for what you did. And I hope that the United States Federal Department of Transportation, the Texas DPS, and the Texas Education Agency levy fines against you that will remind you in the future that you are transporting the future of America on your district-owned school buses and not testing your drivers. Ladies and gentlemen, from a professional standpoint, our investigation is concluded. And I will state to the listeners out there that in addition to an email being sent to these individuals, that if any green form shows up when an audit is performed on the Tyler Independent School District from the Texas DPS, if any form shows up, and we're talking about the urine screening that has my signature on it, whoever signs that form would have committed a felony known as forgery. And yes, charges will be filed against that individual. Your ignorance not to follow the law could have been tragic in this situation. You had no idea who I was. You had no idea where I came from. Didn't know me from Adam and Eve. Never drug tested me. How did you know I didn't have illegal substances within my body before you handed me the keys to a school bus of your district? Ladies and gentlemen, the answer to that question is a capital N-O. No. The Tyler Independent School District did not know that. Instead, The Tyler Independent School District judged a book by its cover. In this case, and thank God nothing happened. What do I mean, folks, when I say judge a book by its cover? Well, I'm a nice dresser. I like to wear very nice clothes, very nice jeans, boots, shoes. I dress nicely. I keep my beard and mustache trimmed. I keep my hair short. I like to look professional. Yes, you take an individual that would walk into a transportation or a administration building nicely dressed, some people would think, look at that fella. He looks sharp. He can't possibly be on drugs. Again, in my professional opinion and from my official and professional standpoint as a professional podcaster, the Tyler Independent School District jumped the gun and judged a book by its cover. I guess Tyler ISD, Dr. Marty Crawford, Dr. Armis Lawrence didn't think about performing that final segment of pre-employment. I guess those two individuals didn't think about what would have happened if I had been under the influence of illegal drugs, crashed a school bus, and killed everybody on the bus, including myself. How are you going to explain that to US DOT and Texas DPS without the official drug screen? Again, idiocity with a capital I is the face of the Tyler Independent School District. You get exactly what is handed down to you by the authorities. And folks, that will conclude this version of the podcast, the chat. I hope that this has been very informative to you. And if you are a parent of young children that drive a school bus, you absolutely have the right to go to that school and request those documents. Has your school bus driver that carries your precious children been tested for the illegal use of drugs and alcohol? We'll see you next Friday for another edition of the chat. This is Alan Fitz, and as always, live from our studios here in Amarillo, Texas. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.